Welcome to the channel for another exciting video. Most people who watch our videos are not subscribed, so I kindly ask you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new content. Your like is essential for YouTube to understand that this content is relevant. So please like, share, and leave your comment. Now, let's get to the story. Alice was sitting at her desk in the brightly lit classroom, her eyes fixed on the sketchbook in front of her. The pages were filled with sketches of dresses, skirts, and blouses that she dreamed of creating one day, but at that moment, she could barely concentrate. The laughter of her classmates echoed around her, cutting like knives. "Look at Alice. What is she drawing? Gorilla clothes." A sarcastic voice rang out, followed by a wave of laughter. Alice felt her face burn with shame and quickly closed the sketchbook as if that could protect her from the scorn. She had always been an easy target. The extra weight she carried was not just physical. It had become an unbearable emotional burden. Her stomach twisted, but instead of crying right there, she decided to ignore the hurtful comments. With a distant look, she dreamed of a future where her creations would be seen as art and not as a reason for mockery. When she got home in Brooklyn, Alice locked herself in her room and opened her sketchbook again. This was her sanctuary, a space where she could be who she truly was. As she drew, the door to her room opened, and her grandmother, Mary, walked in. She had a warm smile that always brought comfort. "Hi, dear. What are you creating today?" Mary asked, approaching the table. Alice hesitated but soon replied, "Just some drawings. Nothing special." Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Mary leaned in to get a better look. "Nothing special? These are beautiful, Alice. You have an amazing talent. Look at these details. You should show this to the world." Grandma always knew how to encourage Alice, even when she was dealing with her own demons. Mary, a former seamstress, had faced many challenges and knew how cruel the fashion industry could be. "But what if they laugh at me again, Grandma? What if I fail?" Alice questioned, insecurity shining in her eyes. Mary sat down next to her, taking one of Alice's hands in hers. "Listen, my dear, life is full of challenges, but you need to find strength within yourself. Remember, the vast majority of people who have achieved something meaningful faced scorn and ridicule. What matters is what you believe about yourself." Alice looked into her grandmother's eyes and saw the determination that had always inspired her. "Do you really think I can do this?" she asked, a thread of hope forming in her voice. "Absolutely. You just need to allow yourself to shine. Every drawing, every idea you have is a part of you. Don't let others dim that light. And if you want, I can help you make some clothes. Let's turn your drawings into reality," Mary exclaimed with enthusiasm. Her grandmother's words reignited a spark in Alice. Even with the pressure and fear, the idea of turning her passion into something tangible began to take shape. She decided she would participate in the school fashion show, an opportunity that made her nervous but could also be the chance to show the world who she really was. "I'm going to do it, Grandma. I'm going to participate in the fashion show," she declared, determination growing within her. Mary smiled, proud. "That's right. We will do it together, and I will be by your side every step of the way." The two embraced, and Alice felt that although the path would be difficult, she was not alone. With Mary's help, she was ready to face her fears and begin her journey of self-transformation. During the school fashion show in the Bronx, the atmosphere was electrically charged with anxiety and anticipation. Alice, with her heart racing, felt the sweat on her palms as she prepared to step onto the stage. The bright lights dazzled her, and the murmur of the audience became a distant buzz. She wore a dress she had designed and sewn by herself, a piece that reflected her vision of beauty and inclusion. But as she looked out at the audience, her heart sank when she spotted the familiar faces of former classmates, ready to make jokes and mock her. "Look, here comes Alice, the model of the class," one of the boys whispered, and laughter echoed. The comment cut Alice like a sharp knife. She tried to ignore it, but each laugh seemed to amplify her insecurity. When it was her turn to step onto the stage, a classmate, out in a cruel act, decided it was time to put on a show. He positioned himself in front of her, and in an attempt to humiliate her further, gave her a slight push, causing her to stumble and fall. The sound of her body hitting the floor was deafening, and the laughter from the audience turned into a painful echo that reverberated in Alice's mind. Shame enveloped her like a second skin, and she felt exposed, vulnerable, as if all her fears had come to life. "Get up, Alice. You can do it," Mary shouted from the audience, her grandmother always supporting her. But her voice seemed distant. With tears in her eyes, Alice struggled to get up. The feeling of failure tormented her, but when she looked at Mary, she saw a glimmer of encouragement. With effort, she stood up, dusting off her dress and trying to regain her composure. However, the humiliation was intense. On the way home, Alice couldn't hold back her tears. Curling up in her room, she sat on the floor, with her sketchbooks around her. Why am I not like the other girls? She wondered, the pain in her heart heavy as a rock. The door opened gently, and Mary entered, sitting down next to her. "Dear, can I give you a hug?" Alice nodded, and Mary wrapped her in her arms, providing comfort in such a difficult moment. "You saw what happened." "I'm a joke," Alice murmured. Her voice choked. "No, you are not a joke. You are an artist, and artists face challenges. What happened today was just a part of your journey, not your destiny," Mary responded, with the wisdom that only a grandmother could have. "Remember, I also went through tough times when I started sewing. People didn't understand what I was doing, but I never gave up." Alice looked at her grandmother, admiration growing inside her. "But what if I fail again? And what if you shine? Life is not just about what can go wrong. Look at what you can create. Use that pain as fuel. Turn it into something beautiful," Mary said, with a determined look. Her grandmother's words resonated in her mind. Alice realized that the pain she felt could be transformed into strength. She decided that she would not let a moment of weakness define her. With a new sense of purpose, she stood up and headed to the basement where she used to draw. With a determined smile, she grabbed her pencils and began sketching new ideas. Each stroke was a declaration of who she really was, a statement that beauty was not confined to imposed standards. There, surrounded by her notebooks and materials, Alice began to design clothes that reflected an inclusive fashion, embracing all shapes and sizes. "I am different, and that is wonderful," she whispered to herself, as tears streamed down her face. But now they were tears of hope and renewal. Alice was determined to transform her pain into art and her story into a source of inspiration. Alice was determined to turn her pain into something positive, and with her grandmother Mary's help, she began to bring her dreams to life. The basement, once a dark and lifeless space, was meticulously transformed into a small studio. The walls were painted a soft shade of blue, which brought a sense of calm and creativity. Mary brought her old sewing machines, tools, and scraps, turning the space into a true fashion sanctuary. "Now, you have a place of your own, Alice. Here, you can create everything your mind imagines," Mary said, with an encouraging smile. Alice looked around, feeling the energy of the place. The smell of fabric, the sight of colorful scraps, and the warm presence of her grandmother made her feel like she was finally on the right path. In the days that followed, Alice spent hours drawing and sewing. She dedicated herself to creating clothes that represented her vision of inclusive beauty, with cuts that celebrated all bodies, regardless of size. The afternoons were filled with laughter and lively conversations between her and Mary, who shared stories of her youth as a seamstress and the challenges she faced in the fashion industry. "Remember, dear, true beauty comes from within. And when you feel good about yourself, it shows in everything you do," Mary said as she cut a piece of fabric. Alice nodded, inspired by her grandmother's wise words. She knew the journey would be long, but she was willing to fight for her dreams. One morning, Mary suggested that Alice participate in a local fashion event in Chicago. "It's your chance to show the world what you can do, my dear. Are you ready for this?" Mary asked, with a sparkle in her eyes. Alice hesitated, remembering the humiliation she suffered at the school fashion show. "What if I fail again, Grandma? What if people laugh at me?" she asked, insecurity still consuming her. "And what if you shine? What if people are inspired by your story? You'll never know until you try," Mary replied firmly. Her grandmother's words echoed in Alice's mind, and after a moment of reflection, she decided it was time to face her fears. "You're right. I'll do it," she exclaimed, determined. On the day of the event, Alice arrived in Chicago, nervous but excited. The venue was filled with models and designers, and she felt a flutter in her stomach upon seeing her former classmates among the crowd. "I don't know if I can do this, Mary. Look at all of them. They seem so confident," Alice said, trying to hide her anxiety. Mary held Alice's hand. "Remember, you don't have to be like them. You are unique, and that's what people want to see. Trust your talent," she encouraged. Alice took a deep breath, absorbing the strength her grandmother was imparting. With her heart racing, she walked to the back of the stage, where her creations were displayed. When it was her turn to present her pieces, Alice stepped onto the stage with a mix of fear and determination. The bright lights dazzled her, but as she looked into the audience, she saw familiar and encouraging faces. She began to walk the runway, her clothes flowing gracefully as she moved. The murmurs in the audience made her heart race, but instead of succumbing to insecurity, Alice remembered Mary's words. At the end of the presentation, applause began to echo throughout the hall. Alice felt a wave of relief and joy. "I did it. I really did it," she whispered to herself as she left the stage. Mary was waiting for her backstage, her eyes shining with pride. "You were amazing, my dear." "Your authenticity and courage shone through," Mary said, hugging her. Alice smiled, feeling a confidence she had never experienced before. In that moment, she realized she was only beginning her journey in fashion, but with the love and support of her grandmother, she was capable of facing any challenge. Alice was nervous as she prepared for the local fashion event in Chicago. Her heart raced in her chest, and she looked in the mirror, trying to find courage in her reflection. The creations she had designed with such care were hanging on hangers around her, each reflecting not only her style but also her personal struggle for acceptance and inclusion. Mary, her grandmother, was by her side, watching her granddaughter with a look full of love and encouragement. "You look beautiful, my dear. These clothes are an extension of who you are. Remember, what matters is your authenticity," said Mary, placing a comforting hand on Alice's shoulder. "People need to see that." Alice took a deep breath, trying to absorb her grandmother's words. "What if I fail, Grandma? What if no one likes what I created?" Her voice trembled, revealing the insecurity that still accompanied her. "If you fail, you get up and try again." "But I promise you won't fail. You have something special, Alice. Trust yourself. Look at these clothes. They tell a story. Your story," Mary replied with an encouraging smile. The event was about to begin, and Alice felt a mix of anxiety and hope. As the show started, she positioned herself at the sides, watching the models strut down the runway. The bright lights and pulsing music filled the room, but her gaze soon shifted to a group of former schoolmates who had crossed her path. Fear enveloped her like a thick fog, reminding her of all the humiliations from the past. "Look over there. It's the fat girl who designs clothes," one of them commented loudly, laughing with the others. Alice felt her face heat up, but Mary was by her side, holding her hand. "Don't listen to them. Remember what you are here to do. Your voice is more powerful than they will ever be," Mary whispered. Alice closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath, recalling her grandmother's words. When she finally opened her eyes, she saw the faces of the attendees, all eagerly waiting to see her creations. This was her chance. When it was time for Alice to present her clothes, she felt as if she were about to step into a new world. With her head held high and her heart racing, she walked to the runway. The music began to play, and with each step her confidence grew. The looks of curiosity turned into admiration as she started to showcase her creations. The pieces she designed were vibrant and unique, reflecting not only fashion trends but also the diversity she so passionately advocated for. The colors and cuts were bold, and each model strutting down the runway seemed to carry a piece of Alice's story with them. When the presentation ended, the audience stood and applauded. The feeling of accomplishment was palpable, and Alice couldn't believe what she was hearing. Among the applause, she spotted David, an agent from Los Angeles, watching her intently. His gaze was serious, but Alice felt a spark of hope. After the show, David approached her, his smile encouraging. "Alice, your creations are incredible. You truly have a unique eye for fashion." "I'm impressed," he said, extending his hand in greeting. "Thank you," Alice replied, still dazed by the compliments. "I just wanted my clothes to inspire others to accept themselves as they are." and you are doing that. I would like to discuss an opportunity with you in California. How would you feel about auditioning? Fashion needs voices like yours, David proposed, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. Alice hesitated. The idea of going to California felt like such a big leap. I don't know. This is all so new to me. Mary, who had been listening to the conversation, encouraged, Alice, this could be your chance. You deserve this. Go and show the world who you are. With her grandmother's support, Alice finally nodded. Yes, I accept. I want to seize this opportunity. Excellent. David smiled, and Alice felt a wave of excitement as she realized she was about to embark on a new journey, one that could change her life forever. Alice was nervous as she waited for her turn at the audition in Los Angeles. The atmosphere was filled with aspiring models, each anxious for a chance to shine. The bright lights and the sound of lively conversations made her even more apprehensive. But she took a deep breath, remembering her grandmother Mary's words. True beauty comes from within. Dear, show the world who you really are. When her turn finally came, Alice entered the room with a mix of insecurity and determination. The panel of judges watched her closely, and she felt their evaluating gazes on her. Just be yourself, she murmured to herself, adjusting the blouse she had designed and sewn with her own hands. The fabric fit her body in a unique way, reflecting her vision of inclusive fashion. Come on, Alice. Show us what you've got, said one of the judges, a woman with short hair and a striking style. Alice positioned herself, took a deep breath, and began to walk down the runway. Each step was a mix of confidence and vulnerability, but she reminded herself that she was there to celebrate her true essence. As she reached the end of the runway, she turned and struck a pose that captured her determination. Great. Now we want you to talk about your style and what it means to you, requested one of the judges, a man in a sharp suit. Alice hesitated for a moment, but the image of her grandmother appeared in her mind, and she found the courage she needed. My style is a representation of what I believe to be true beauty, she began, her voice steady. Fashion should not be restrictive. It should celebrate diversity. I have always believed that every body is unique and deserves to be valued. She saw the judges exchange intrigued glances. Keep going, encouraged the short-haired judge, smiling. I grew up facing bullying and felt invisible. Fashion was my refuge, and through it, I found my voice. I want other people who feel excluded to know that they are beautiful just the way they are. As Alice spoke, she felt the energy in the room shift. She was connecting with them, sharing not just her creations but also her story. After the presentation, the judges sat in silence for a moment. Then, the man in a suit, who seemed to be the leader of the panel, said, Alice, you brought something unique to this room. Your authenticity is refreshing, and that is exactly what the fashion industry needs. Alice's eyes sparkled with emotion. She knew she was at a crucial point in her journey. Thank you so much. That means more than words can express, she said, trying to hold back tears. After the audition, Alice was invited to her runway debut in New York. It was a dream come true, but at the same time, a wave of nervousness washed over her again. The presentation day arrived, and she was surrounded by other models backstage. The atmosphere was electric, and Alice could feel the adrenaline in the air. You're going to kill it, Alice. Just remember what you said in the audition, said a fellow model, who introduced herself as Sophia. She had a confident attitude and an encouraging smile. Alice smiled back, feeling a little more secure. When her name was called, Alice positioned herself at the entrance of the runway. The blinding lights temporarily blinded her, but she soon remembered that she was there to show the world her vision. As she took her first step, she felt as if she were floating. Each step brought her closer to a dream that felt almost unattainable. When she reached the end of the runway, she turned and struck a pose that captured not only her essence, but also all the struggles she had faced. A wave of applause echoed through the room, and Alice smiled, her heart pounding with joy. Her grandmother's words reverberated in her mind. You are strong, my dear. Never forget that. The audience was filled with diverse faces, each applauding not only her clothes but also the message she represented. Alice realized she was not just showcasing clothes but also her story, her struggle, and her victory. And in that moment, She knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, ready to become a powerful voice in the fashion industry. Alice had become a reference in inclusive fashion, and her passion for promoting diversity led her to create a collective of models that celebrated beauty in all its forms. The space that was once a dark basement had now transformed into a vibrant studio, filled with colorful fabrics and inspiring sketches. With the help of Mary, her grandmother, Alice organized the first meeting of the collective in an art studio in the heart of Brooklyn. The models began to arrive, each bringing with them a unique story. There was Sophia, a young trans woman who had faced many challenges in her journey of self-discovery, and Jamila, a plus-size model who had always dreamed of shining on the runways. Alice welcomed them with a warm smile. "Welcome, girls. I'm so happy you're all here. Today, we are going to come together and celebrate who we are." As the young women settled in and chatted excitedly, Alice began to explain her vision. "I want this collective to be a safe space where we can support and inspire each other. Fashion is a form of expression, and each of us has a unique voice that deserves to be heard." Sophia raised her hand, her eyes shining. "Alice, you've done so much for us. If it weren't for you, I might never have had the courage to present myself as I am. Your story inspires me to live my truth." Alice smiled, touched by Sophia's words. "Thank you, but we all have an essential role in this journey. Together, we can challenge the industry's standards and show that beauty does not have a single shape." The meeting continued with laughter, sharing experiences, and a strong sense of belonging. The models began sketching ideas for an inclusive fashion show they intended to hold, where each could showcase her personal style and stories of overcoming challenges. As the excitement filled the room, Alice decided it was time for a more serious moment. "Girls, I want you to know that while we are here to celebrate, we also need to address what has hurt us in the past. Today, I would like to invite you to share your experiences. It can help strengthen us even more." Jamila hesitated for a moment but soon shared her journey. "I've always loved fashion, but I was ridiculed because of my body. Getting to this point has been a constant struggle, but seeing you shine, Alice, has given me hope." Alice listened intently, feeling each word. "Thank you for sharing, Jamila. I've also gone through tough times. Bullying made me doubt myself, but that's what unites us. Each of us has a story of overcoming." It was then that, to everyone's surprise, a familiar figure appeared at the studio door. It was Alice's former classmate, the one who had humiliated her at the school fashion show. The atmosphere grew tense, and several models began to murmur. Alice felt her heart race, but she decided to face the situation. "Hi, Alice. I just wanted to apologize," the guy said, with a remorseful look. "I didn't realize how much my words could hurt. Today I realized that beauty comes in many shapes, and it shouldn't be something we should be ashamed of." Alice took a deep breath, remembering the pain she had felt. Instead of leaving it in the past, she saw an opportunity for growth. "Thank you for coming to me and apologizing. That's important. We are all on a learning journey. I believe everyone deserves a second chance, and that includes you." The sincere dialogue between them generated a wave of emotion in the studio. The models listened attentively, realizing that true healing comes from forgiveness and understanding. Alice turned to the group and said, "Each of us has the ability to change. Let's use our voices to inspire others to do the same." The collective grew stronger that day, and the models felt more united than ever. They knew they were on a journey of transformation, not just for themselves, but for all the people facing similar challenges. Alice smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of something grand. Alice was at a turning point in her career. With her name becoming increasingly well known in the fashion industry, she knew she would face not only applause but also criticism. On that sunny morning in New York, she was preparing for a runway show that promised to be a milestone in her journey. But she couldn't ignore the anxiety that accompanied her. As she looked out of the dressing room window, she thought of her grandmother Mary's words. "True beauty comes from within, my dear. Don't let others' opinions define who you are." The show was about to start, and the tension in the air was palpable. Alice watched the other models warming up and getting ready, all with different bodies and styles, each with her own story. However, the whispers and critical glances about her body still haunted her. In one corner of the dressing room, two stylists were speaking quietly. "Did you see Alice's new line? It's bold, But will the public accept it? One of them asked, a look of doubt on her face. She's trying to force inclusion. I don't know if the industry is ready for that, the other replied, as Alice walked away, feeling a pang of insecurity. As the lights came on and the music started to play, Alice took a deep breath and remembered her journey. She was not there just to walk the runway, but to represent all the girls who, like her, had faced criticism and bullying. As she stepped onto the runway, confidence began to flow. The audience was filled with faces that knew her, and she allowed herself to shine. After the show, as the applause echoed, Alice approached a group of models who were also fighting against the traditional standards of the industry. They were united by a common cause and similar experiences. One of them, Maya, a black model with curly hair, turned to Alice with a smile. You were incredible out there. The energy you brought was contagious, Maya exclaimed. Thank you. But you know there will always be critics. I feel like I still have to prove my worth, Alice replied, shaking her head. Don't let that bring you down. The fashion industry needs more voices like yours. We are here to change that together, Maya encouraged, looking into Alice's eyes with determination. As they talked, other models joined them, sharing stories of overcoming challenges in the industry. One of them, Sarah, commented, When I started, I was called too fat for the runway, but instead of giving up, I decided to fight. And now, here we are, making history. Alice felt a wave of gratitude for having found such inspiring women. They were proof that diversity and inclusion were slowly gaining ground, even though there was still resistance. We need to do something about this. We can't just wait for things to change. We must take action, Alice said, with the flame of determination ignited within her. The other models agreed, and soon an idea began to take shape. They gathered to discuss organizing a show that celebrated diversity, an event that would not only showcase their creations, but also send a powerful message to the fashion industry and everyone watching. Let's show that beauty doesn't have a single standard. We need a show where everyone feels represented, Maya suggested enthusiastically. And we can invite influencers and media people. We need our voices to be heard, Sarah added, her eyes shining with excitement. Alice knew there was a long road ahead, but she felt ready to face any challenge. With the support of her new friends and colleagues, the idea of an inclusive show began to take life. They embraced each other, united by a greater purpose, and Alice knew she was about to take a significant step in the fight for inclusion in fashion. Alice was radiant as she prepared for the launch of her own clothing line, a dream that had come true after years of struggle and self-discovery. The event would be held in a modern gallery in Los Angeles, filled with natural light that highlighted the vibrant colors of her creations. She had designed a collection that celebrated body diversity, with pieces that fit different shapes and sizes, reflecting her belief that fashion should be inclusive and accessible to all. On the day of the event, the atmosphere was electrifying. Alice, wearing a dress from her own collection, moved through the space, talking with guests and designers who admired her clothes. You really captured the essence of inclusion, Alice, a model commented while admiring a flowing dress in shades of green and blue. The way you designed these pieces is simply amazing. Thank you. I wanted everyone who wore one of my creations to feel beautiful and confident, Alice replied, her smile lighting up the room. The nervousness still lingered over her, but it was overshadowed by the joy of seeing her work appreciated. When it was time for the show, Alice's heart raced. The lights went down, and the music started playing, creating a magical atmosphere. The models, all representing different sizes and ethnicities, began to walk down the runway, wearing Alice's creations. She watched from behind the stage, feeling a mix of anxiety and pride. Each piece that passed was a testament to her mission to challenge the standards of the fashion industry. Look at how they are moving. It's all so perfect, said Mary, her grandmother, by her side. Alice turned to her grandmother, her eyes shining with emotion. It's so much more than perfect, Grandma. It's exactly what I dreamed of doing. As each model showcased the creations, applause echoed through the gallery. Alice felt that every inch of the runway was a step toward acceptance and celebration of diversity. When the last model walked out, the audience erupted in enthusiastic applause. Alice couldn't hold back the tears of happiness. She stepped onto the stage and emotion enveloped her. Thank you all for being here today, Alice began, her voice trembling but strong. "This collection is a reflection of what I believe. We are all beautiful in our own way. Fashion should embrace diversity, not exclude it." The audience applauded even more, and she felt a wave of encouragement that propelled her to continue. After the show, Alice was surrounded by journalists and influencers who wanted to know more about her journey and vision. During an interview, a reporter asked, "Alice, how do you feel now that your clothing line is a reality?" "It's surreal. I've always dreamed of creating something that makes people feel good about themselves. Fashion shouldn't be a standard to follow, but a form of expression. Each of us has a story, and I want my clothes to tell those stories," Alice replied, with a sparkle in her eyes. The response was instant. The collection not only received acclaim, but also began to attract the attention of major brands interested in collaborating with her. During a live interview on a television show, Alice shared her story of overcoming challenges and the importance of self-acceptance. "We all face challenges, but it's essential that we learn to embrace our differences and love ourselves as we are," she said, moving the audience. The event was a resounding success, and Alice felt that she was just getting started. With her clothing line, she not only wanted to sell clothes but also to inspire and empower those who, like her, had felt inadequate. The echo of her message of inclusion resonated in all directions, and Alice knew there was still much to be done. She was determined to continue her journey, not only as a designer but as a strong voice in the fight for inclusion in fashion. Alice was about to make an appearance on a renowned talk show in New York, a significant milestone in her career as a model and activist. She was preparing to face the camera, nervous but also excited. The production team informed her that one of her former school rivals, Clara, would be on the show. Clara had been one of the main contributors to the bullying Alice faced during her adolescence. However, instead of feeling anger or fear, Alice decided it was time to show the world how much she had changed. When she arrived at the studio, the audience welcomed her with warm applause. Alice smiled, feeling the positive energy. She sat next to the host, who began asking questions about her journey in fashion and her activism. The host, knowing Alice's story of overcoming challenges, didn't hesitate to mention Clara. "Alice, we know you had a tough past in school, and that you're here today with Clara, your former classmate. How do you feel about that?" Alice took a deep breath, looking at Clara, who was sitting a little further away. The cameras focused on Clara's face, which looked a bit nervous. "You know," Alice began, her voice calm and confident, "what I've learned over the years is that forgiveness is one of the keys to freedom. I no longer carry that weight." Clara looked at Alice in surprise. I didn't know my behavior affected you so much," she said, her voice choked. "Actually, I was struggling with my own insecurities. I feel bad for hurting you." Alice smiled slightly, noticing her former rival's vulnerability. "We all have our battles, Clara. I believed I needed to be perfect to be accepted, and that led me down a very painful path. But today, I understand that beauty comes in many shapes and sizes, and that's what I want to convey to everyone." The host, surprised by the sincerity of both, intervened. "This is truly inspiring, Alice. You've not only overcome your difficulties but are also helping others do the same. What would you say to those who are still facing similar situations?" Alice looked directly into the camera, her gaze determined. "I would say it's important to accept yourself as you are. We are all unique, and that is what makes us special. Don't let anyone define you. True beauty is being yourself." The audience applauded, and Clara seemed moved. "I would like to publicly apologize, Alice," she said, sincerity in her voice. "I didn't understand the impact my words had, and I truly admire what you've become. I accept your apology, Clara. And I hope we can use our experiences to help others," Alice replied, with a genuine smile. "Let's show that empathy and understanding are more powerful than any criticism." Alice's words resonated in the studio, and the atmosphere changed. The host, realizing the importance of the moment, decided to open up for audience questions. A young woman raised her hand and, with a trembling voice, asked, "Alice, how did you manage to overcome the pain of the past?" Alice answered with a sparkle in her eyes. "I realized I needed to turn my pain into something positive. Art and fashion were my refuge, and, of course, the support from my grandmother, Mary, made all the difference. She always reminded me that I am more than my appearance." The audience fell silent, absorbing her words. The host, visibly emotional, concluded the conversation. You two have taught us a valuable lesson today, the power of forgiveness and acceptance. Thank you, Alice and Clara, for sharing your stories. As the show came to an end, Alice felt a wave of relief and joy. She had managed not only to confront her past, but also to transform a painful moment into a testimony of growth and acceptance. The conversation was etched in everyone's memory, and social media soon filled with praise for the maturity and empathy Alice had demonstrated. She knew that by opening her heart, she had inspired others to do the same, and this was just the beginning of her mission. The big day had finally arrived. Alice was standing backstage at the New York fashion show, surrounded by a frenzy of models, makeup artists, and designers. The atmosphere was electrically charged, the sound of laughter and conversation mixed with the clatter of heels echoing on the venue's floor. The bright stage lights were on, and the aroma of hairspray and perfume floated in the air. Alice felt a wave of emotion as she looked at the audience settling into their seats, all eager to see the celebration of diversity she had envisioned. "You look amazing, Alice. I'm so proud of you," said Mary, her grandmother, who was beside her, emotional. Her eyes sparkled with tears of happiness as she watched her granddaughter, who had once been shy and insecure, now transformed into a true leader in the fashion world. "Thank you, Grandma," Alice replied, holding Mary's hand tightly. "I couldn't do this without you. You've always believed in me." Mary smiled, remembering all the tough moments they had overcome together. "Remember, my dear, true beauty comes from within. You are an inspiration to all of us." Alice took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline rise. The lights began to flash, and the models prepared to step onto the runway. The show would start in moments. She positioned herself in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress that she had designed herself, a symbol of her journey and her fight against conventional beauty standards. "You're ready, Alice," shouted one of the models with an encouraging smile. "Let's rock it." When the music began to play, Alice walked onto the stage, her heart pounding. The audience warmly applauded and cheered for each model that passed, but the energy she felt as she stepped onto the runway was indescribable. The confidence she had cultivated over the years was now palpable. When she reached the center of the runway, Alice paused for a moment, taking a deep breath before addressing the microphone. "Hello, everyone. Today we are not just here to showcase fashion, but to celebrate diversity and inclusion. Each of us is unique, and that is what makes us beautiful." The audience stood and applauded, and Alice felt a wave of emotion. She continued, her voice strong and full of passion. "When I was younger, I faced many challenges and often felt invisible. But with the support of my grandmother and incredible people around me, I learned to value every part of who I am. And that's what I want everyone here to feel, that you are enough just as you are." The audience was in respectful silence, absorbing every word. Alice looked at the models walking around her, all with radiant smiles, representing beauty in its diverse forms. "Today, we are here to show that fashion should embrace all shapes, sizes, and colors. We are here to break barriers and redefine what it means to be beautiful. Let's continue this fight together." When she finished, the audience erupted in deafening applause. The spirit of acceptance and celebration filled the air, and Alice felt she was truly making a difference. The show continued, each model bringing her own story and style, uniting in a powerful demonstration of solidarity. At the end of the event, Alice gestured for all the models to gather around her. With tears of joy in her eyes, she looked at Mary, who was watching her from the back, clearly moved. "We are all in this together, and this is just the beginning," Alice declared, as the runway lights flickered in the background. "Let's continue to fight for a world where everyone feels loved and accepted. Together, we are stronger." The show ended with a triumphant celebration, where all the models united, raising their hands in a sign of unity. Alice's legacy as a pioneer of inclusion in fashion was solidified, and she knew her journey had only just begun. So, what did you think of this story? Your opinion is essential for us to improve our content. Write what you thought in the comments and remember to subscribe and like this video. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next video.